Hi, I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies, and do you shop local? And what do you think about shopping local? Now, I'm a local archery store, so I would hope that most of the local archers would shop at my store to support my local store. Because if you don't, your local stores will go out of business. And then maybe you buy your stuff from a larger store over the internet. Maybe you don't want to support your local store. Up to you on whether you want a local store and what it has to offer and its pricing and its level of service. Now for me, I used to enjoy going to my local archery shop as a junior, and even as an adult I like the idea of going into a local store. Now the other day I wanted to go and buy some vitamins because I haven't been that well, so I'm like, these are meant to be good for your gut. Okay, so I go to my local store and I think they are $33.50 price tag on the shelf. That's what I thought, but it was hard to see, very small writing, right? So I was like, well, that sounds about right for some probiotics, which are really good for your gut and meant to make you healthy. So I go to the counter to pay, and it's a one-person operation in a local supermarket. Local supermarket, they just sell health food stuff. I go to the counter and they're $88.50. And I'm like, $88.50 for some vitamins. Anyway, I fork out the money because I'm like, oh, well, maybe I got the price wrong and maybe they're $50 for 30. Maybe that's the way it is. Anyway, the first thing I do when I get home is I go on Google and I go, herbs for gold, probiotic 55 billion 60 capsules, what's the price in Australia for this online? And the answer is $45. That's when I get annoyed because there's an amount which you think, well, how much customer service is this? How much is the local store adding in value to the product? And that makes me question the whole local versus just internet sales. Now for me, when I sell a bow in an archery store, I spend about 2 hours with the person, setting up the bow, teaching them how to shoot, and that's all included in the price. And I've got to compete against the internet seller for that product, which is a huge problem in archery, okay? And you're competing against internet stores from overseas, which don't have to pay our taxes. So they just bring it in, you don't have to pay the taxes, but I do. So this is the stuff you have to think about when you're buying local versus over the internet. Now at $88.50 for this group of vitamins, I was pretty annoyed. Now I know the local guy at the shop, and I assume he owns it, has to pay shop rent. But I'm like, 40 he made. Now he made more than $40 because he can buy it over the internet for $45. The person on the internet selling them has got to be making money, I assume. There's been archery shops before selling archery gear who don't make money because they're generally incompetent at working out basic maths, or maybe they're trying to clear the item out. But there seems to be a whole bunch of people selling this at $45 a bottle. So I assume at $45 they're still making money. So he's making $50 a bottle when I walk in. Now my little time for serving someone and what time I value my own product for comes to question. So I either value my time at $10 an hour, in which case it was $5 of my time, 5 hours of my time for this bottle. If I made $500 an hour, it's like 10 minutes, I probably wouldn't care that much. So it's all got to do with how much money you make and whether you feel like you got good value for service. Now I will say I will never be back to this store. I will never be back. There's a couple of issues. One, I don't like the fact that I don't have prices on stuff, no prices. And you can say, well, Stephen, you don't put prices on your stuff as well. And the problem I have with putting prices on stuff is when new stuff comes in, means you've got to go and reprice it. When the Australian dollar goes up or goes down, you've got to go and reprice it. And it's just another layer of work when a shipment comes in. When a shipment comes in, I'm normally trying to put it online, come up with the pricing while doing orders, while answering phone calls, while dealing with walking customers, and normally it's like 1 to 2 days to put a normal sized order online. So then if you've got to update all the pricing on the shelf, creates a problem. So as much as it's nice for me to have pricing on the shelf, it's a problem doing so, because then the price on the shelf and the price on the internet will be different, and then people get annoyed with you because they'll be like, well, you had this price at $40 and on the internet it's 45 or at 35, so it can be one way or the other. So they'll get annoyed either way. So I understand not having prices in a small store with low turnover, but I'm going to say when the price is way out of the realms, it's when you don't tend to shop at a local store. Now, when my dad first came to buy some bows, some archery bows, there was two stores in this state, in Adelaide. Now, one he thought was a bit of a rip-off, so he refused to buy there. Now, I didn't have a problem with them. Never had a problem with them. And it may be I was a bit ignorant with pricing when I was 12 years old, or it might be that they rip people off. Anyway, my dad jumped on a plane, flew to Sydney, and brought 5 bows in boxes, unopened, from a place called the Archery Centre, which actually closed because he made more money from renting out the shop than from running an archery shop. So that's what happened to the Archery Centre. But Dad jumped on a plane to Sydney, brought 5 bows, and jumped on a plane back because now the question would be, why didn't he buy them off the other shop? And the answer may be the other archery shop, who Dad got on very well with, didn't have 5 bows in stock. And why does Dad want 5 bows? It's the way Dad was. But if people believe you don't offer good service or you don't offer value for money, they won't buy from you. So then you've got to think, well, if the person does offer good service and value for money and you don't buy from them, then you probably will find you won't have an archery shop in your town. So now, this may not affect you because you'll go, well, I've got a bow press. I buy everything online. I buy everything from Lancaster. I'm fine. Doesn't affect you. What it affects is the next person getting into the sport. Okay? The next person getting into the sport walks into an archery shop and goes, I don't know anything about archery. I want to get started. That's the value of the archery shop. It teaches a person how to shoot, tells them the basic, it gives them a variety of products to purchase, and it tells them a bit about the sport. It tells them where the clubs are. Now, you may not think about this. Now, when I was in Canberra, when I had a shop in Canberra, I would say the archery clubs in Canberra were bigger than they've ever been. The archery clubs now in Canberra, I would say, are smaller than they've ever been. Now, the archery clubs in Canberra are very well funded as far as they have good facilities. The problem is, who's going to get the archers into the sport? Who's going to teach them and say, go to your local archery shop? That's the problem. I mean, when I was in Canberra, I was selling $5 million worth of archery gear a year. All being built up from ground, from a small shop in my garage, and I just built it up through customer service. So now people are going to say, well, there's archers in the archery shops, archery clubs in Canberra. Well, what I'll do is I'll pull up some shooting statistics from your local archery clubs in Canberra and show how many people are shooting. Now, I'm going to roll back the time to when I was club president and all that sort of stuff in Canberra. Canberra took 20 kids to the junior nationals, 20. So we were bigger or as big as any other state. And it's a small state. So I don't think there's any question that a local archery shop builds the archery community. Statistics are that the Archery Association of South Australia has never been bigger than it is now. That's what I got told from the president. Now, you might say, well, you're giving yourself all the credit. Actually, no, I'm not. Because less than 10%, less than 10, so it's maybe 2 or 3% of my customers join archery clubs. Most are just social people. But the point is, a small percentage will go and join your local archery club. So in Canberra, there was much more archers in Canberra when I was there. However, only a few of them would join archery clubs. However, it was still a big number, so the archery clubs were bigger. Right? So you're going to say, well, do we care about archers that aren't in archery clubs? Well, it becomes an issue when you try and ban the sport, when you get a government who comes in and says, look, we're going to tell you what you can and can't do, i.e. the Labor government that we have in now. I'm not having to go at the Labor government, sound like I am, but that's what they're doing right now. They're saying, look, you're not allowed to bow hunt. We're going to tell you what we think's acceptable, and that's what you're going to have to do. Now, it used to be back in my day when I was a kid, there was all freedom and you could make your own choices. The days of people making choices for themselves and being told what they can and can't do from government, I think have long gone. I think COVID just wiped that all away. If you want to come to work, you need to be vaccinated. You want to go to the pictures, you've got to be vaccinated. You want to go to the zoo, an outdoor zoo, you need to be vaccinated. So I'm going to go back to the local shop. Think to yourself, do I want the local shop to be there? Do they add value to me? Do they add value to the sport? And if they do a good job, support them. It may be that the online store is cheaper. It may not be. They may not be cheaper. I get so many people who buy their stuff thinking and going, how much does that cost? And it's like, I'm cheaper, but they haven't done the basic maths. And I'm like, anyway, in a retail shop, you've got to be price competitive and you've got to offer some level of service. That's my basis for the shops. And I'm going to say, for me operating a shop, it's very, very hard to justify owning a shop. It's much easier to go and join the council and be a public servant because you get paid amazing salaries, you get all these holidays, and it's a very, very nice lifestyle as opposed to owning your own business where people are dropping reviews on you and judging you and making an assessment of you every single time they deal with you. So there's lots of upsides to owning a business, but there's lots of downsides to it as well. Anyway, I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. Think about it when you go and buy a product and do your homework, because the shop's probably going to thank you for doing it. Before you buy a product, you're going to say you probably should have researched it before you purchase this product. I thought their pricing was okay. I was wrong. That's it. I won't be back from one product. And I did feel like ringing them up, and I'm like, well, maybe that's a jerk move. So anyway, I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. You can drop comments below whether you support your local shops or whether you don't. But I always think it's very, very interesting from my perspective. And just on the local shops, I wouldn't have opened a shop in this state. When I came here, I was ready to retire. I was like, this is it, I'm retiring. I got to my state and the shop in this state, I walked in there and I'm like, where's all your stock? And he looked at me and he was blank face, and I was like, but you owe me more than you've got stock on your shelves. I was like, where's all your money? You had lots of money 2 years ago. And he said, I don't know. And I'm like, great. The other shop was going out of business. So I'm like, so the option is that this state would have no archery shop. Now there's going to be people say, well, there's another archery shop in the state. And maybe me being disrespectful, but it's an archery shop that is aimed not at the beginner archer, it's aimed at the elite archer, and caters for basically people with a large budget. So I don't count that as an archery shop. And at the time they weren't open. They were in their backyard, and they were just mail order. So, and they were offered to have a retail shop, but they refused it at the time. But it was like, what do? Do you either support archery because you're into archery and you think it's a good thing? I think it's a good thing that people shoot bows. I'd rather people shoot bows than be sitting there playing computer games and be depressed at home. I think it builds a lot of people's confidence, gets them down to meet people, builds up their self-confidence, and I think it's a good thing for relaxation for people. So that's my thing for doing it. But anyway, that's one reason too. My shop, I generally have low overheads, so I try and keep my overheads really low because I don't want to have products that are really out of the ballpark when it comes to pricing. I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. Thanks for watching.